I didn't think a secret could feel heavier than a confession, but hers did. It started in the most ordinary place possible, the corner coffee shop on Maple, the one with the crooked chalkboard sign and the clock that runs 3 minutes fast. I started going there after my brother left for work in the mornings. No reason, really. Just somewhere to sit with my laptop open and not type anything. She was already part of the routine before I realized it. 44, maybe 45. Always there before 9. Always the same seat by the window. Sunlight touching the edge of her hair like it had permission. She wore simple things, soft sweaters, linen shirts, nothing loud. A thin silver ring she twisted when she read. The first time she spoke to me, it wasn't anything meaningful. "You're going to let that go cold again," she said, nodding at my coffee. I looked down like it had betrayed me. "I like it that way." She smiled, not correcting me, just lifted her cup in quiet disagreement. After that, we started sharing small things. The barista forgetting my name. The playlist that never changed. Once, she remembered my order before I said it. "Medium, no sugar." "You pretend you don't need it." I laughed a little too long at that. She noticed. Her eyes held mine a second past polite. It wasn't dramatic. There was no music swelling in the background. Just two people sitting across from each other some mornings, knees almost touching under a table too small for strangers. I told myself it was harmless. At 26, I should have been somewhere louder with my life. Instead, I had half-finished projects saved on my desktop and a phone full of conversations I never sent. Sometimes I'd type a message to someone, an old friend, a girl I almost dated, and just watch the blinking cursor until the screen dimmed. She seemed to notice things like that. "You always look like you're about to say something," she said once, stirring her coffee slowly. "And then you don't." "Maybe I forget," I shrugged. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. There was something careful about her. Not distant, just measured. Like she'd already lived through the messy version of this kind of thing and had no interest in repeating it. One morning, it rained hard enough that the windows fogged. The shop felt smaller, quieter. She reached across the table without thinking and wiped a circle clear in the glass with her napkin. I watched her hand longer than I should have. The veins on the back of it. The faint scar near her thumb. "You're staring," she said gently, not looking at me. "Sorry." She finally met my eyes then. Not amused. Not offended. Just aware. "It's okay," she said. "I don't mind being seen." That stayed with me the rest of the day. Being seen. I wasn't sure I was used to that. Most people looked through me, or around me, or at their phones while I talked. She watched like she was listening to something beneath the words. The first time she touched my arm, it was accidental. Or maybe not. I'd made a joke about the barista's terrible latte art, and she laughed, really laughed, and her fingers landed lightly against my sleeve. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. There was a pause there. A small one. But it stretched. Later that week, she didn't show up one morning. I told myself it didn't matter. People have lives. Appointments. Better places to be. I still checked the door every time it opened. When she came back the next day, she looked different. Not in appearance. Just quieter. "You okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She studied her cup before answering. "Can I tell you something?" My chest tightened in a way that didn't feel optional. "Yeah," I said. "Of course." She glanced toward the counter, then back at me. Her fingers folded the edge of her napkin. Once, twice. "It has to stay between us." And I nodded before I knew what I was agreeing to. She didn't say it right away. The secret. It just sat there between us, warm and untouched like the tea she'd ordered instead of coffee. I watched the steam disappear while she folded and unfolded the same napkin, her eyes somewhere far past the window. "I used to come here with my husband," she said finally. Simple. No tremor in her voice. I nodded like that was a normal thing to hear at 10 in the morning. "We'd sit over there," she added, tilting her head toward the larger table near the bookshelf. "He hated this place. Said the chairs were uncomfortable." "Why keep coming?" I asked. A small shrug. "Habit, I guess." Or, I didn't want to give it back. She looked at me then, like she'd said too much. I didn't ask what happened. The absence of a ring on her finger had already answered most of it. "I'm divorced," she said anyway. Direct. Clean. I swallowed. I figured. That obvious. Not obvious. I hesitated. You sit like someone who's learned to sit alone. That earned a quiet exhale that might have been a laugh. Or something close. You're very observant for 26. There it was. The age. Not judgmental. Just placed on the table. I shrugged, suddenly aware of how young my hands looked around the mug. You make it easy. She held my gaze a little longer than usual, and something shifted. Not dramatic. Just acknowledged. I have a son, she said. He's 23. The number landed heavier than it should have. Oh. I leaned back slightly, like the chair needed adjusting. Does he? No, she cut in gently. He doesn't come here. That wasn't what I meant to ask, but it felt like the question underneath. We let the silence stretch. Not uncomfortable. Just loaded. I imagined her son. Imagined him walking in and seeing us like this. Knees angled toward each other. Voices lowered without meaning to. The thought pressed against my ribs in a way that felt like guilt. This is nothing, I told myself. Just coffee. Just conversation. But it didn't feel like nothing. She reached for the sugar jar, then paused. You ever think about how strange timing is? All the time, I said too quickly. She smiled faintly. If we'd met 10 years ago, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I pictured it anyway. Her younger. Me still in high school. The thought should have shut everything down. Instead, it made this feel sharper. Later, when the rain started again, she offered to share her umbrella. It was practical. Logical. The parking lot wasn't far. We walked close without commenting on it. Her shoulder brushed mine once. Then again. At her car, she hesitated. Thank you, she said. For what? For not making it strange. I almost laughed at that. It already was. She reached up then, quick and absent-minded, and smoothed a crease from the front of my jacket. Her fingers lingered half a second too long near my collarbone. There was nothing explicitly intimate about it. If anyone had been watching, it would have looked maternal. Harmless. But her eyes didn't match the gesture. They were searching. Careful. Warm in a way that didn't belong to obligation. Drive safe, I said, because I couldn't think of anything braver. As she got into her car, she looked at me through the open window. Some things, she said softly, are better left unnamed. I stood there long after she drove away, rain soaking through my sleeves. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After the umbrella, something changed. Not outwardly. We still met at 9. Still sat at the small table by the window. Still talked about nothing important. But there was a thin wire under everything now. Tight. Humming. She started arriving later. 10 minutes. Then 15. The first morning she didn't come at all. I told myself I didn't care. I answered emails I didn't need to answer. Rearranged my camera bag twice. Checked the door every time it opened. When she finally walked in the next day, she avoided looking toward our table at first. Ordered her tea. Stood at the counter longer than necessary. I didn't wave. She came over anyway. Sorry, she said, sitting down. Things have been busy. With your son. The question slipped out. Her jaw tightened, not angry. Just careful. He's staying with me for a few weeks. Oh, that's good, I said, and meant it. Mostly. She nodded. Stirred her tea, even though she hadn't added anything to it. Silence stretched. Not comfortable this time. I think, she began, then stopped. Her eyes flicked to my mouth and away again. We should be mindful. Mindful, I repeated, like I was testing the word. You know what I mean. I did. I leaned back, folding my napkin in half. Then in half again. We're just talking. Yes. A beat. That's what worries me. I didn't ask why. I didn't want her to spell it out. A couple from the neighborhood walked in then. An older man and his wife. The wife recognized her. Oh, you're back here again, the woman said lightly, glancing at me with polite curiosity. And you've made a friend. The word hung there. Friend. She smiled the way adults do when something needs to look ordinary. This is, she paused, realizing she'd never actually introduced me to anyone before. He lives nearby. I nodded. Too quickly. The couple moved on. Ordered pastries. But I felt their awareness like a draft. She didn't meet my eyes for a while after that. Maybe we should skip a few mornings, she said softly. There it was. The pullback. Because of them. I asked. Because of me. Her fingers were trembling slightly against the cup. She steadied them by wrapping both hands around it. I don't want to confuse you. A short laugh escaped me. You think I'm confused? Her gaze lifted then, sharp. Searching, aren't you? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because yes. And no. And something worse. I know what this is, I said carefully. Do you? The way she asked it, almost hopeful, made my chest tighten. She reached for her bag. Not leaving. Just anchoring herself to something solid. I'm older, she said quietly. I've already made enough mistakes to recognize the beginning of one. And what if it's not? I asked. She looked at me like that was the most dangerous thing I could have said. The shop felt smaller again. Too warm. The clock ticking too loud. Her hand was still on the table. Closer than usual. I don't remember deciding to move, but my fingers brushed hers. She inhaled sharply. Not pulling away. Not leaning in. Just suspended. Our faces were closer than they'd ever been. Close enough that I could see the faint line near her eye, the one that deepened when she almost smiled. If we do this, she whispered, barely there. There's no pretending we didn't. I didn't answer. I think I leaned in first. Or maybe she did. Our foreheads nearly touched. And then the doorbell chimed. She pulled back like someone waking up. Too fast. Too late. We stopped going to the coffee shop. Not officially. No agreement. It just happened. Instead, we started walking in the evenings. A loop around the neighborhood park where no one paid attention to anyone. People passed with dogs, headphones, grocery bags. Ordinary lives moving in straight lines. Ours kept drifting too close. Her son had left again, back to his apartment across town. She mentioned it casually, like weather. He asked if I'd met anyone. She said one evening, hands tucked into her coat pockets. And I kept my eyes on the gravel path. I said no. The word no felt heavier than it should have. We walked a few more steps in silence. A couple jogged past us, laughing at something private. I felt a flicker of something sharp in my chest. Jealousy, maybe. Not of them. Of how simple it looked. You could, I said. Meet someone. She glanced at me. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. That was the most honest thing I'd said in weeks. We reached the wooden bench near the pond and sat down. Not touching. Close enough that our sleeves brushed when the wind shifted. I saw you yesterday, she said quietly. My stomach tightened. Where? Outside your brother's place. A pause. You were talking to that girl. The one with the red scarf. Oh. I exhaled, almost relieved. She's just a neighbor. She touched your arm. I looked at her then. Really looked. You noticed. I noticed things. Her jaw flexed slightly. I don't like that I notice. There it was. The crack. You don't get to be jealous, I said gently. Her laugh was short. I know. The pond was still. Too still. Like it was listening. I don't want to be this person, she continued. Counting who stands too close to you. Wondering who texts you at night. I swallowed. Because she wasn't the only one counting. You think I don't do the same? I asked. She turned toward me fully now. Knees angled in. Guard down in a way I hadn't seen before. This isn't fair, she said. You're 26. You should be out there, making mistakes with people who don't have history stitched into their skin. And you? I asked. She hesitated. I've already made my big mistakes. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did. Slightly, resting on her lap, fingers curling inward like they were holding something fragile. I don't feel like a mistake, I said. She closed her eyes at that. That's the problem. Silence again. Thick. Honest. A group of teenagers passed behind us, loud and careless. We both instinctively leaned a fraction apart until they were gone. I think about you more than I should, she admitted finally. In the mornings. In the quiet parts of the day. I rearrange my schedule and tell myself it's coincidence. My pulse was loud in my ears. I wait for you to text, she added, softer now. And when you don't, I tell myself that's better. I didn't know whether to feel chosen or warned. She looked at me then, fully exposed. No careful distance. No practiced restraint. If we cross this, she said, voice barely above the wind. What happens when it ends? The question didn't sound hypothetical. It sounded inevitable. I shifted closer without thinking. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her through her coat. Close enough that one small movement would erase whatever line we'd been pretending to protect. Her eyes dropped to my mouth. Mine stayed on hers. And neither of us moved. Yet, the next evening, she didn't come to the park. I told myself she was busy, that the question she'd asked, what happens when it ends, just needed time to settle. I walked the loop anyway, past the pond, past the bench, sat down alone, and watched the water move like nothing had shifted. The day after that, she texted, "We should slow down." No emoji, no explanation. I stared at the message long enough for the screen to dim, then light up again when I tapped it, like that would change the words. Slow down from what? We hadn't even. I typed. Did I do something? Deleted it. Typed. Is this about your son? Deleted that too. Finally, okay. 3 letters. Safe. Cowardly. She didn't respond. The coffee shop felt wrong without her. I went once, just to prove I could. Sat at our table. Ordered her tea instead of my usual. It tasted thin. The barista asked, "Where's your friend?" I shrugged like it didn't matter. Busy. I noticed things I hadn't before. How loud the grinder was. How the clock really did run fast. How the chair across from me stayed perfectly empty. 2 days later, I saw her car outside her house when I drove past. Lights on in the living room. Silhouette moving behind the curtains. I slowed down without meaning to. She wasn't alone. A man stood near the doorway, taller than me, older. Not her son. This one had his hands in his pockets like he'd been there before. Like he knew where things were kept. My stomach dropped in a quiet, controlled way. It wasn't dramatic. There was no scene. Just the simple realization that I didn't know everything. Later that night, she called. I almost didn't answer. "I should have told you," she said immediately. "Told me what?" "My ex." A pause. "He's been around. We've been talking." The word talking felt loaded. "About getting back together." I asked. Silence. Then, "About closure." I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny. Because it wasn't. "You don't believe me." "I don't know what I believe." Another pause. Longer this time. "I got married when I was 22, she said softly. "I don't know how to separate habit from love. And I don't trust myself not to confuse you while I figure it out." "So you disappear?" I asked. "I protect you." The line felt rehearsed. Or maybe just practiced from a different lifetime. I walked to my window and looked out at the dark driveway between our houses. The space felt wider than it ever had. "I didn't ask to be protected," I said. "I know." Her voice cracked then, just slightly. Enough for me to hear it. "I care about you," she added. "That's exactly why this is dangerous." Dangerous. Like we were reckless. Like this hadn't grown slowly, carefully, over months of glances and unfinished sentences. "I need time," she said, "to decide what I'm doing." "And what am I supposed to do?" Another silence. "Live," she answered. "Don't wait for me." The call ended without goodbye. The next morning, I typed a message. "If you choose him, just tell me. I can handle it." I read it twice. 3 times. Then I locked my phone and left it on the counter. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. That evening, I walked past the park. The bench was empty. I didn't sit. 3 nights later, there was a knock at my door. Not loud. Just certain. I stood there for a second before opening it, like the extra pause might protect me from whatever version of her was waiting on the other side. She looked smaller somehow. No makeup. Hair pulled back loosely. A sweater I'd seen before. The soft gray one she wore to the coffee shop. "Hi," she said. I nodded. "Hi." Neither of us smiled. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. The house was quiet. My brother was working late. The kitchen light was the only one on, casting a warm circle over the counter. She walked in slowly, taking in the room like it mattered. "I won't stay long," she said. "Okay." We stood across from each other with the counter between us. Safe distance. Almost formal. "I saw him," I said first. I didn't mean to start there, but it had been sitting in my chest for days. She nodded. "I know. You thinking about going back?" She exhaled through her nose, like she'd rehearsed this answer and still wasn't sure it was right. "I was," she said. "Or maybe I was thinking about not being alone." The honesty landed gently. No defense in it. "And now?" I asked. She looked at her hands. Twisted the thin silver ring she still wore on her right hand. "I realized something," she said. "When he was sitting on my couch, I kept wondering what you would say about the way he talks over people. or how he never finishes his tea. A faint, almost embarrassed smile touched her mouth. That's not love. That's comparison. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or more afraid. I don't want to go back, she continued. But that doesn't mean this is simple. It was never simple. I know. Silence again, but softer this time. She stepped around the counter. Closer. Not touching yet. I've been trying to protect you, she said quietly. From the age difference. From my son finding out. From what people would say. And my voice felt steadier than I expected. And I realized you didn't ask for protection. You asked for honesty. There it was. The choice. I don't know how this ends, she admitted. I don't know if it lasts 6 months or 6 years. I don't know if one day you wake up and decide you need someone who doesn't have history. She swallowed. But I do know that walking away because I'm scared feels worse than staying and risking it. My chest tightened. You don't have to promise anything, I said. I'm not asking for forever. What are you asking for? I thought about the bench, the umbrella, the way she wiped the fog from the window so we could see out. For now, I said, just don't pretend this isn't happening. Her eyes searched mine like she was looking for doubt. She didn't find it. Slowly, carefully, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, slightly trembling. This is reckless, she murmured. Probably. She almost laughed. Okay, she said finally. Not dramatic. Not breathless. Just decided. Okay. And in that small kitchen, with the light too bright and the world still very ordinary outside the window, she stepped closer. Not a rush. Not a collision. Just enough that the space between us stopped pretending to exist. And this time, neither of us pulled away. We didn't tell anyone right away. There was no announcement. No dramatic shift in routine. Just small adjustments that felt bigger than they looked. I stopped going to the coffee shop at 9 every morning. She still went sometimes, but not at 8:47 a.m., not at the table by the window. That time belonged to a different version of us. Instead, we met in the evenings now. At her kitchen counter. On my front steps. Once, back at the park bench, just to see if it would feel different. It did. Less fragile. Less like something that could vanish if someone walked past. Her son found out first. Not because we told him, but because he saw the way she looked at me when I came over to fix a shelf in her hallway. The conversation that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't kind either. There were questions about timing, about judgment, about what I thought I was doing. I didn't have clever answers. I care about her, was all I said. It sounded small, but it was true. Weeks passed, then months. We built something that didn't need defending every day. Saturday mornings became ours. She'd make tea, still too weak for me, and I'd bring black coffee from the shop, setting it on her counter like a quiet callback. You're impossible, she'd say, watching me take a sip. You love that, I'd answer. She never denied it. Sometimes we'd walk to the park again, sit on the same wooden bench. Not because we had to talk through anything anymore, but because that's where we'd almost lost our nerve. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the trees, she rested her head lightly against my shoulder. No tension, no scanning the path for familiar faces. Just warmth. You know, she said, I used to think love was supposed to feel certain. And now I think it's just chosen. Over and over. I understood that. The choosing. It wasn't dramatic. It was dishes in the sink and her reading glasses left on my nightstand. It was me learning how she takes her tea when she's had a hard day. Stronger. No honey. It was her texting at 8:47 one morning. Just thinking about you. Drink your coffee before it gets cold. The age gap didn't disappear. The world didn't suddenly approve. But it stopped feeling like a threat and started feeling like context. We talked about the future carefully. Not in years. In seasons. If one day you want something different, she said once, folding laundry beside me, I won't hold it against you. I know, I replied. But I'm here. And I was. The first time we went back to the coffee shop together. Openly, we didn't take the window seat. We chose a table near the back instead. Less symbolic. More comfortable. She reached across the table for my hand without hesitation. No fog glass. No hidden glances. Just us. Sometimes I think about that first morning, the napkin in her hands, the way she said her secret had to stay between us. It did. Not because we hid it. but because what grew from it was never about spectacle. It was about two people deciding not to walk away just because it would have been easier. The secret she shared stayed with me, not as something forbidden, but as the moment everything honest began. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?